buddy. No lurking. Come on, all right. Well, thank you for coming. My name is Brian Wright. I'm the principal of Town Planning and Urban Design Collaborative, and leading the team to help you all figure out the update of the zoning ordinance. Good to go around quickly and do introductions and get to know each other a little bit. We all probably know each other. Go ahead.
I'm Jarrett Schaefer. I'm with TPUDC. I'm a urban planner and sustainability.
In the back there.
Oh, Jesse, Demumbrian Chapman, Coosa River Basin Initiative.
Great.
Hey, I'm Brittany Griffin. I'm the associate planner with the Rome Floyd Planning Department.
Senior planner, planning department.
Mary Catherine Tuning, Fire Marshal, around Fire Department.
Aaron Carroll, City of Rome, Marine Department.
Felipe Ayala, City of Rome, Marine Department. Cooper Bragg, Rome.
Harry from Price and Associates from Jake Hager, Seth from Alliance.
Mark Cochran, Rome City Commissioner.
Julie Smith, Tread, Rome Floyd, nonprofit trail advocacy group.
Bill Temple, Tolson, Wright Real Estate.
Regina Brown, running for City Commissioner in Ward 2.
John Massey, I support Regina, and I'm also a realtor in town.
Great. All right. So we have been having technical meetings, several of them so far. Format is free form, more of a conversation, and just here to pick y'all's brains and learn and take notes and things. Try to understand, all the different elements that go into making this place tick, make it special, what it is, where it wants to go in the future. And what we've been talking about so far is, the zoning ordinance update is a direct reflection of the comprehensive plan. So we're basically writing the rules and regulations to support the vision that's in the comp plan. And the vision in the comp plan talks about things like, walkable, mixed use, bikeable, kind of a model city for the future based on the principles of the past that made the parts of the city that people love so much. Kind of continuing on with that same design philosophy, not design and architectural necessarily, but design and layout of the city and how it functions. So this meeting is specifically to talk about things having to do with transportation, connectivity. Obviously, the comprehensive plan talks all about connectivity as being important. And so just trying to get a sense of and understand, how your network is working right now, what the, as new development comes in, how are the transportation considerations sorted out, and is it working, and what room for improvement do we need going into the future? So who's first?
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
What is currently in the ULDC about?
That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah. I've been focused on the comp plan so much, so
I mean, as far as trails and things like that go, or
Just in general, I'm just trying to get a background of.
it's a great question, because a lot of times we come to a place and the zoning is old enough that it hasn't even taken into consideration something like connectivity. Other places we go new enough where it's required for all the streets to connect, even if it's, adjacent parcels, you have to stub in and those sorts of things. So
I'll make a comment. One of the things I've heard some people talk about recently was that our current ULDC requires sidewalks to be put in all the time in specific, I should say, in redevelopment situations. And I love to use the example of over by my house, Holmes Road, Skyline Drive. There's no sidewalk anywhere near this small redevelopment site. Would have been an infill type redevelopment The word that I heard, I wish Walt was here today, the word from them was that they were required to do sidewalks in an area that would connect them to no other sidewalks.
Yeah.
So the ULDC is very, very boilerplate and there's no real workaround. And so to me, there's not a lot of common sense used. If you can't say, well, there's no sidewalks anywhere near it, therefore we shouldn't have to require sidewalks.
So is that accurate? You have
Eric,
to have
what
sidewalks
is that
everywhere?
requirement? Because they got brought up,
Yeah, I've been here quite a while. I've been here a long time, probably longer than anybody in this room. Prior ULDC and that sort of thing. And when I came here, the standard was when you improve your property, whether it's re-improvement or whether it's a new construction, you are required to improve your half of the right of way to the current city standard. It'd be no different than going into a house and rehabbing a house and having to redo the wiring.
Right.
I mean, because the theory was, whether it was right or it was wrong, the theory was we're developing in the city. When we develop in the city, we have a certain look that we see.
Yeah.
And I don't see half-wide streets with a ditch. I see a city street with curb and gutter and a sidewalk.
Yeah.
That is my picture of city development.
Is that the requirement?
That's the current requirement.
Okay.
If you're developing, now sidewalks are only required, and Walt was wrong there because sidewalks are only
Just
required on
curb and
anything.
gutter though.
Curb and gutter was required, but there again, close your eyes and I picture development in a city street. I see at a minimum curb and gutter.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go out in the county, ditches are fine.
Right.
You know, you got big wide lots, but that's what I see. Maybe everybody don't see that. That's what I see.
Yeah.
And if everybody wants to change it, that's fine.
Sure.
I'll see what everybody else sees.
Yeah.
But today, that's what I see. That is development in the city. There is a minimum standard for being in the city. And it's different than the look in the county out in the country.
Yeah.
And I would hope that would be a general planning perspective or anywhere. It may or may not be.
Yeah.
Anyway, in the city, you're required to add sidewalks if you're doing redevelopment along any street that's a higher classification than a local street.
Got it.
So if it's collector, arterial, whatever, and some of those you don't, well, I have a mixed feeling on that. Some of those, maybe we don't necessarily want the sidewalk on, but then the other side of me says, you know what? Guess what sidewalks are? Sidewalks are part of the trail system.
Mhm.
So do I want a trail system? Yeah, well, then why not go ahead and require that sidewalk, even though it may connect to nowhere today? You gotta start somewhere, or you don't ever have it.
Exactly.
If I may say, in my community, the sidewalk is a connectivity to the property owners and creates a lot of, in my particular subdivision, they use it like crazy.
And the sidewalk gets the pedestrian where he needs to be, out of the street.
Yeah,
You
if you
don't have to be
don't,
walking in the street,
if you don't require them,
so.
then it's a surefire way to never get them. And so there is, it's like a puppy, right? You get a puppy, it's really cute. And then there's this bit where it goes through like this leggy phase and it's real awkward and kind of falls and stuff. And then it turns into a real dog. It's like, there's these times as you grow, it's growing pains and you hear all of them, look at that sidewalk to nowhere. That's so dumb. What are they thinking? The city's so stupid. But at some point, you give it a few years, all of a sudden they're like, oh, look at that. We've got sidewalks everywhere.
Now it connects.
Yeah.
But you got these, everything about this redevelopment project is what our housing summit has been pushing, which is density.
Yeah.
They had it laid out just like there were old shotgun houses on this site.
Yeah.
There would be 1-bedroom houses, there would be for rent. They had an overlay of how it used to look. It's an infill project, which is what the city and county have been pushing, the city's been pushing. Because of the requirements of be able to get a fire truck, go all the way around it, and the curb and gutter, it killed the redevelopment. They only did 2 houses instead of doing the density. So if you saw this site, I mean, I hear what y'all are saying. I agree, you should plan for the future. But the chances of, in our lifetime, seeing sidewalk up and down Holmes Drive, Holmes Road, are slim to none.
Well,
So
and
the
to your
other side
point-
of
So then
that-
it killed the project.
To your point, though, it isn't a binary decision. It's not a yes and a no. It's not a sidewalks or no sidewalks. It's not a city and a county. Because even in the city, what you see, even in the most loved historic parts of various cities, you'll see that certain neighborhoods that are more urban do have sidewalks, curb and gutter. There are other neighborhoods that are even sort of smaller scale, more intimate, and the streets are small scale enough that people comfortably walk in the street. Now, when you say that from emergency services and engineering, it's like, I get it. But from a practical, like, human existence in cities and towns, like that is what you see. So I don't think necessarily one size fits all is what is the best practice.
Well, we had, we went over and saw what Frank Norton's been doing in Gainesville. I don't know if y'all have been over to see a lot of his projects. And he's had to do a lot of work around with the city over there and the county, but mainly the city. And they've worked with them. It's not been easy for him. But he's been able to get them to do a few things on a trial basis with, impervious. Instead of pavement, he's done gravel, but it's pea gravel type, crush run type driveway. Just things to cut his costs back so we can build these projects and do infill. If we stay where we are with our ULDC, we are going to really struggle doing these infill. I mean, really. So my position, this was kind of my thing, it's been my thing. It's just, I don't think we need to be more restricted than the state in any. Because if we're really trying to grow and redevelop, we need to be accommodating to somebody who's willing to do that. We finally have these home builders in Rome who built in new subdivisions for years and years, and they never would build in a blighted area or an area of redevelopment. They're wanting to do it now because there's some incentives there. We've talked about it a lot. We've educated them. And so now they want to do it, but we're kind of being hamstrung by the ULDC.
So the other part of that, though, is, to your point, it is a trail. But, right, I mean, connectivity is important,
Yeah.
but we don't make private citizens pay for trails. Somewhere along the way, the city switched from paying for sidewalks to making the private end user pay for sidewalks.
I don't know anything about that. I'm
So-
not aware. Even if you go back into the 80s, not necessarily with sidewalk, I don't recall sidewalk, but I do recall curb and gutter.
Yeah.
We used to go into communities in curb and gutter where these people would sign a petition and they would say, we want our street improved. We want curb and gutter. We're willing to pay out of our pockets so much per linear foot toward y'all curb and gutter in our street. The city would go in and improve the drainage for the curb and gutter, pave the road, really make it look nice in what might be considered a blighted area. And then the citizens, the homeowners, were actually paying to improve their neighborhoods.
Yeah.
That program hadn't been implemented or pushed, or even, I don't know that anybody even knows it was back there, but me, in 15 years, but people will pay to help improve their property.
Yeah.
And it made it look like, in Aaron's brain, it made it look like the city then. We don't have all these ratty streets, full of cups and cigarette butts and trash, and they can't mow them, we can't mow them. It really looked nice when you dress like that. And I don't know that anybody has been approached about that. But that was a program that we had in place for years. And our street department used to be double in size that it is now, and we had the forces to do that. If somebody came to us today, I don't even know that we have enough people to do it. Well, we're so hamstrung.
Well, that's a priority from granted elected officials,
Right.
letting everyone know what our priorities are, right? But in my opinion, if it's going to be considered part of the trail system and part of a traffic and transit network, then that is the city's responsibility, not a private owner's responsibility. And I know that may be a difference in philosophy, and that kind of solves what you're talking about, because if we have a piece of sidewalk out in the middle of nowhere, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But if we have a comprehensive plan on how to spread the network and sidewalks to get everywhere, then we're in control of that, not y'all. And it works out a lot better if that happens.
Being able to develop it.
This is, I wasn't my project, by the way. This was a competitor's project. It was somebody else, but, what I heard was a story, and then within a year, we had basically what they were trying to do was being promoted by indirectly. I mean, it wasn't like y'all set up the stage for Frank Norman or for Frank Norton to actually come show that, but what he was showing he was trying to do in Gainesville, which was really popular. It was creating housing in these areas. He was putting, 10 houses on an acre or whatever he was doing, small, houses, and he was leasing them out. And then in some cases they're selling them.
Sure.
But it was helping solve some of the housing issue. But when you have situations where your lot width is so small that now, because of the ULDC, like some of these South Rome lots, you can't build on now.
Yeah.
You have to consolidate these lots to build on them. That kind of defeats the purpose of creating the density and housing that we need. So our minimum lot size, we just changed, but we really didn't.
Yeah.
Because there's still setbacks and lot width and things like that that are stymieing us. So there's a lot to be said about the old ULDC. Apparently was pulled from like Gwinnett County, which was going through uber hyper growth, and we weren't. So we kind of adopted the wrong overly restrictive plan for Rome when we really just needed, to me, the state minimum. I mean, to me, it's
Where does the state minimum, help me,
for fire safety code, for everything, just kind of the state.
but is there a
The state
state
level.
minimum for lot widths and street widths? What do you, help me understand?
Well, no, just-
I don't know what you were.
Not just in that case, but in any specific situation throughout our ULDC. If there's a state
Standard
code,
that exists. Okay. All right, let me say a couple of things here. Let's talk number one about the fellow developing in Gainesville. Gainesville on the average is 600 to 800 feet higher than elevation in Rome, Georgia. Gainesville as a large, I used to work in Gainesville through a contractor when I got out of college. Gainesville in large overall has wonderful soils. They can do septic tanks. They've got good raw materials for building the road. We do not have that. We have some of the absolute sorriest, poorest soils in the state of Georgia. And if you don't believe it,
I know
you go ask the contractor that's working for Atlanta Gas Light when they're digging in Shorter Avenue and places are caving in the size of a dump truck. So here's the problem we have. We have very poor soils. It's kind of like that thing of trying to make a purse out of a sow's ear, something that said in the Bible. Well, to build a road in Rome, Georgia that will stay there is very difficult. I mean, you go ride some of our county roads, subdivision roads right now, and because of the rules that, in my opinion, are not stringent enough right now, those roads are all to pieces, and it's because of what's under. They kind of tricked and got by. But really, the first thing you do, Larry Maxey finally learned it in Garden Lakes, the first thing you do is go haul off the first 3 foot, because you can't build a road on it, haul it off and haul in 3-footed chert to build a good road. So building roads correctly in Rome and Floyd County, for the most part, is hard to do and is inexpensive. Battle Farm. That, if you start talking about state standards, you don't want to see what it costs to build a road to a DOT state standard in a situation like that. You just fold it up and go to the house, because you can't do it. So we have these challenges that we have tried to work with developers and contractors to come to some kind of an equilibrium of get as good a road as we can, but not break the bank. So we have unique challenges in this area that most of the other people around do not have when it comes to roadway construction. And it's hard, it's very hard. So as far as I'm concerned, those standards, I want to hear this, those standards need to go up a notch. Because for the most part, in the areas where you go that they build roads, they go in, they get the road bed ready, you got 6 or 8 inches of GAB, You got 2 inches of binder, and then they don't even put that last 1.5 inches of topping on it until 70% of the homes are built. Well, that's not the way we do it. We build a road all the way out to start with only 6 inches of GAB and 1.5 inches of topping. Then when your construction traffic hits it, it tears it all to living pieces because it wasn't built for that. So I want to see us go in the other direction to enhance and make our road standards better, so hopefully it can withstand the construction traffic. And the other problem we have, and it's maybe fixing to change, I don't know, a lot of areas where you go where they do that, they build out quick. They can get to 70% in a year or less. Well, Lord, some of our subdivisions, you can't get to 70% in 10 years.
Yeah, 15-year build out.
So what do? You know, I mean, it's a very difficult, so, you know, I hear about all this, we ain't got any houses, but my question is, where are all the people coming? Where are all the people coming from to live in these houses and buy them? And maybe they're coming. I certainly hope they are. But I also want everybody to understand that we have unique challenges in Rome Floyd County with our raw materials on which we're trying to construct and build roadways.
Yeah.
It is not good. It is not Gwinnett County. It's not Parto. It's not Gordon. We're down here in this, but there's a reason you got 3 rivers right here in this basin. You know what blows my mind is we're only 600 foot higher in elevation than the ocean, and you got to drive all day to get to it. So inherently, we've got this bowl that holds water and rots the soils, and it makes it a challenge. We have outlying areas where they are good. The new subdivision going on off North Broad, that'll be some of the best soils that anybody has built a subdivision in years. It's high, but you go anywhere to Garden Lakes and Armurchie.
Yeah, well, just to clarify, I mean, however y'all want to build your roads, you build them the way you want to build them. We're not gonna, you know, as far as what happens under the ground, we don't care about that. You get that right. That's y'all's thing, right? And so, but sounds like you got it figured out though.
And our house is meeting on Saturday.
And for me,
I had a COVID shot. I couldn't make it. I was in bed.
For me, the only
in the house.
Hey, all right, congratulations. That's awesome. That's an
excuse.
excused absence, for sure. So what we do care about is how you experience it on the ground, you know, right? The width of the road and all of that.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about that for just a minute.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
let's
two
talk.
of you, please swap philosophies on this. 'Cause
Okay.
this is
Okay,
important.
and Mark has probably got a third flight, that's fine, that's
No,
what we're
well,
doing is talk, okay, here's my thought as an engineer, okay? Now that we have reduced lot width, we're gonna build a house. We might get 2 cars off the pavement. Then when we get the first kid in the house, in other words, there's the narrower that lot gets, the more somebody's got to park on the street. And you can go to Walton Creek right now, and I think those are 60-foot lots. It was developed in the county and we got it in the city. I went to Walton Creek the other morning at 8:30 in the morning. I don't know how a fire truck could have got down through there. There's cars parked on both sides of the street. Maybe they could not have parked in the driveway. I didn't really assess that. But when you encroach into that travel way, these people can't get there.
Can a garbage truck get down
I think it would have been pushing for a garbage truck.
there? I mean, they have garbage there. I'm
Yeah, they
assuming.
do.
Okay,
And
the
it
garbage
comes
truck
over.
comes and picks it up. I'm
But they
assuming.
would have been coming through there slowly. I'm just telling you, I could not
That's what I was
believe.
about to say. You didn't speed through there. I can
No,
guarantee you
sir.
that.
No,
It is very traffic, which is
so
very
with-
nice for all those kids that live in that subdivision.
With a reduction in lot width, we have to understand, we're creating a situation where that third and that fourth car is not on that 200-foot wide lot anymore, where we could build these turnarounds and places for them to get off the road. No, the only place left is in the road.
Yeah.
So we just need to be mindful of that. And as far as any reduction in paving width right now, I don't see it. You can go
What's
to
your
Walton
typical
Creek,
lane width right now?
23 foot, 11.5 foot length of pavement with 24-inch curb and gutter in a new subdivision. With a sidewalk, which has to meet ADA requirements, which is 5 foot, which takes us to the thing about, well, can we reduce the right of way? Well, let's talk about that.
Wait, so you got 11-foot travel lanes right now?
11.5.
11 and a half, and then you got,
24 inch per to go.
okay,
And I want to add to that point, as somebody that did some research on traffic accidents. Cars being parked on the side of the road creates a lot of blind spots.
Sure it
A
does.
lot of accidents.
Sure it does. It creates a place for a kid not to be seen.
That's right.
all right, so pause for a second.
Yeah.
In the most loved cities and towns around the country, and around the world, you will find on-street parking. Not on every street, on a lot of streets, certainly in the urban core, in the downtown areas. And I don't mean Manhattan, I mean small towns, like the town I live in Franklin, Tennessee. Like, we got on-street parking.
In subdivision,
All the new subdivisions have to have on-street parking. If you have a lot that is narrow enough, certain, below 40 feet or something, you do a rear lane, you have an alley on the back, because if you don't, you end up having the proportionality of the house being more garage than it is house, right? The garages are set back at a minimum 20 feet. That's at a minimum. But what you really want is like what you see in historic neighborhoods where the garage is well on back, to the full back of the house or even behind. And so the driveway, if the lot's wide enough to have a driveway, goes past the house and then the car's back there. So there's plenty of room for them to park on their own lot. But the on-street parking, the roads have to be designed for it, right?
sure.
So we don't want to just say, let's take a road that is not wide enough to accommodate all these things and make you put on-street parking on. That doesn't work. For there to be one travel lane width in a city is also something that needs to be considered, because if, as the comprehensive plan dictates, everything is based on the idea of character, the character of every street, of every neighborhood, of every place is not the same. And so the width of the travel lanes, whether or not there's on-street parking, what the sidewalks are like, the materiality, if there's curb and gutter, to your point, has a direct impact on that character. And so one of the things we've been doing is going out and studying, roaming around Rome and measuring and documenting what these areas are that people keep saying that they love, kind of what it is about those places. And it has to do with the lot widths, setbacks, street widths, sidewalks, et cetera. And so one of the things that we'll work together through this process on is to figure out a menu, of different options for it, rather than a this and a that.
Sure.
And I think once we do that, everyone will get comfortable on the same page, because we know we've got to get your trucks through, because nobody wants, when they have an emergency, for you to not be able to get to them.
And if I may, make a couple of points, just for a moment. If we narrow our lane widths, that's going to decrease fire protection, which could cause a loss in our ISO rating. 2 years ago, we had a major fire in our historical river district. And thank God the road was long enough for our largest apparatus, which is ladder 1, to set up. And it saved the houses on either side, because we were able to get our ladder, set it up, and the outriggers require a minimum of 24 feet.
Yeah.
And it saved the river district. We've got to be able to get our trucks through. And right now, I have received numerous complaints over the last couple of months. I can't really give you a time frame, but I'll say a couple of months, where people are calling and reporting blocked fire hydrants, blocked cul-de-sacs. And not to say in subdivisions where I can't get through the road, but I have had one of those complaints. So the frequency is starting to pick up now.
Yeah.
About people that are concerned that, hey, these cars are blocking my house. It may be something simple like a smoke complaint, but it starts small and gets bigger. We've got to be able to get there everywhere.
Yeah. Well,
And right now, the complaints are coming in.
I will say this. I hope it goes without saying that we would never propose anything that's going to make it less safe to live here, right? That also, on the other hand, we work all over the country, and we have this same meeting in every place we work. And the discussion isn't always the same. It's most often this. but it's not always. And there are cities that, because their comprehensive plan says, and their elected officials say, and the citizenry say, this is the direction we're going, then everyone sort of sorts it out. So I give the example of in Charleston, they got different vehicles to respond in the downtown than they do in the county, right?
We're a joint agency, we're Rome Floyd County Fire Department, so our trucks are interchangeable.
Yes,
Our city trucks go out in the county and vice versa, especially when we have a bad storm. come
right.
through
And
and everybody
so
knows.
from the elected officials' perspective, if y'all are going to be asked to do something different than you do, you have to have the support and the equipment to do that. You can't just
Yeah.
say, hey, guys, get on board with these narrow streets, but we know you've only got the gigantic truck. I actually met a fire chief the other day. I was shocked. He said that they were getting a new truck and it was much smaller than their other truck, which is never the case. It's always the next truck's bigger than the last truck. It's like, you know, hey, we're gonna order a new truck. Let's go. You know, I get it, you know. You never know when you're gonna get that funding again. So,
Let me ask a question, in your subdivision,
yeah.
okay, you have on-street parking,
Yeah.
designated on-street parking, I guess? Is it?
It's not marked,
It's not marked.
except
okay.
for in the neighborhood center.
Okay, is your streets, are the streets within there one way?
No, two-way.
Okay,
So we've got two-way streets, on-street parking on both sides. In most cases, if there's a park or something, there's not on-street parking on the park side,
right.
but it's not full width either. So you
So
lose
what's
that
your
on-street.
standard roadway width in your
Uh,
subdivision?
10 feet,
10 feet lanes?
10-foot travel lanes, 8-foot on-street parking. And we have fire trucks go through. We have a fire department, a fire station in
So
our
you got-
neighborhood.
Now, wait a minute, wait a minute. So you got 20 feet and you got an 8-foot vehicle parked on both sides. That's 16 with 4 feet left. How do you get through 4 feet?
No. So we've got two 10-foot travel lanes, that's 20, and then two 8-foot parking lanes. So it's 36 feet of pavement.
Oh,
So
and
do that.
so 36 feet of pavement.
Correct.
Okay, well, we've got 23 feet of pavement. You've got 36
That's
feet of
right.
pavement.
Yes, narrowing the roads is not necessarily the most elegant way of saying it. It's narrowing the lanes, but having sure you have the right number of lanes.
Who pays for those parking areas? The developer? When he develops the subdivision?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, do you have curb and gutter?
Yes, not as a hard and fast rule. So for instance, if you're doing like sustainable stormwater techniques where you want to have infiltration into the planting strip between the sidewalk and the street, then you wouldn't have curb and gutter, or you could have it designed so that you have a break in the curb so the water goes through. But typical curb and gutter, yeah.
Okay, typical curb and gutter.
But then you
typical-
also have an alley.
There's an alley, unless there's a reason you can't have an alley, but only if you can't have an alley.
So
which-
Bill, your developers love this.
So you got,
Well, they wouldn't love it till they had to pay for it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, most of what I'm talking about is infill stuff,
Yeah,
but it's not
it's 150
a
lots that
full
Brittany was
development.
talking about.
It's not a full,
Right.
you're going into an old area.
It's a different story.
It's.
The road
and
is
it's
what it
not a
is.
big thing. We're talking about, this one area we've been kind of targeting really is to me, a case study of why the ULDC needs to be adjusted.
Yeah.
And I know it's because this is kind of what this housing summit was proposing we do, yet it had just been turned down by Rome.
Sure.
So, and not just you, but planning,
You know,
everybody turned
I
it
think what
down.
I'd really love to do, I'd really love to carve that out, give that to him. Let him take it to a couple of other places and say, okay, if this was being done in your city, what would your rules be?
I think it'd be great. I think it'd be great.
Yeah.
I keep talking about it because of the fact, it's the only great example I have
I understand.
that was recent enough.
Yeah.
Where it was like, okay, this is kind of what Georgia Power and
Sure.
Frank Norton and all that group came in to show us. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. We just had this come up and it failed.
Yeah.
I wanted Walt to come today. He's
Well,
getting
give him a
tested
drive by
for
sometime if he doesn't have to.
getting the COVID.
That's what
Well,
he said.
I would still love to, let's carve it out and let's give it to him.
Yeah.
And let's see what some other places would have done with that. Because, I mean,
It's
he's
easy
talking
place for
about,
you guys to drive.
he's-
down.
he's
Oh,
talking
yeah, you
about,
could go see it.
he's talking about 4 lots deep on the street that dead ends, pavement, 35 years old, no cul-de-sac, So your garbage truck has got to back down there. You know, if the
Two,
fire
it's
truck-
actually two roads.
Yeah, both of them, one's better than the
They
other.
were back-to-back houses,
Yeah.
little row houses.
Yeah.
How many lots was it originally?
I think it was, wasn't it 4 on each road?
4 or 5 on each side.
I mean, the bottom line is if there's the
Well-
vision, if there's a vision and the desire and the policy for you guys to do infill, right? And it sounds like there is, if the regulations keep that from happening, then you have to change the regulations.
Sure.
I mean, that's the bottom line. So-
Well, and that's the thing is that we are an old community. So that comes with these old neighborhoods where we're trying to work with them, but we also have this ULDC, which is hard and fast.
Yeah.
So it's been very black and white, a lot of, hey, you can't do this, you can't do this. Why?
It's very difficult to work around.
The
And there's some
ULDC
places
says
where the
so.
garbage trucks just back up. That's just what they do. And there's some places where there's no good, rear loading. So they have to stop in the middle of the street and drop off their whatever. to the
What, we're
business.
not trying to skirt safety, but if it's being done in other communities and they consider it safe.
Yeah.
That's just what.
That's what I'd love to see that. I'd love to see what they would have
Well,
done.
so if it's take the 8, 10, 10, 8, our current right of way on a 23-foot wide street is 50 feet.
Yep.
So you could either have 36 feet of pavement and,
And
very
then we'll have
little
a
right of way
side-
on each
And then
side.
you have
Well,
a
but
planting
then-
strip for street trees and then you have sidewalks. There you go.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's
That's
50 feet. but I mean, that doesn't happen. What happens is the right of way happens and
Yeah.
it eats up.
Yeah.
You don't gain the parking because you can't really.
But the other purpose of the right of way is a place to put your public utilities. I mean, let's wind back up a little bit. All right, we got 25 foot, we got 11.5 foot of pavement. We have got 2 foot of curb and gutter. So we're what, 13.5. So we got 6.5 feet left now, right? Is my math right? Out of 25?
I'm doing math in my head.
Somebody do it real quick. 25 minus 13.5. 11.5. We got a 2 foot grass strip.
2
9.5.
feet.
We got a 5 foot sidewalk,
What do you do with 2 feet?
grass strip. You can put them or not.
You can't grow anything but grass in 2 feet.
Yeah,
So you know street trees.
okay. So what if you put street trees in, it gets even bigger. We
Yeah.
don't require street trees currently in subdivisions. So, well, let's just say what we're doing now. So 2 foot, you're down to 11.5. You got a 5 foot sidewalk, you need ADA, so now we're down to 6.5. Okay, so then we gotta put in power, telephone, gas, water, fiber optic.
Yeah.
If you got underground power, you got a 4x4 transformer pad sitting there. So you're basically, you stack all that in there, you're at the edge of the right of way.
Well, it depends on the spacing and if they're commingling and all of that stuff, So,
Most of those guys where they don't like to co-mingle.
well, I know they don't like to. That's the thing, that's the thing. And the dark garbage truck doesn't like to back up and y'all don't like to go slow and, but
I
it's,
mean,
we
the
still
fiber
function.
guy, I don't want to be in the trench with the telephone guy. It's getting harder and harder to coordinate.
Yes,
And
no,
I'll say this too, we've got people that come in, over the years from out of town to try to develop or build. And we're not Athens, Georgia, as far as the difficulty and the layers of bureaucracy that they go through in Athens, but I promise you, we're not that far off.
Yeah.
And we hear it from people, and they're not just from Alabama or from a county that has less zoning. A lot of them are coming out of Atlanta, and they'll say, wow, I don't see how you get anything done here.
Mhm.
And so it's tough to hear these stories. I've got a list in my phone in my notes of people that if we ever really have this conversation, I'm probably taking this thing way away from where you're trying to be right now. But
It's all related.
I have this list of people that over the years have told me that I could bring in and they all just tell you a story.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that we've mainly been local people developing all these years, but if you're gonna grow it all at some point, if you have no outside development, it's not a good, healthy sign that you're growing.
Yeah.
And right now, we don't have enough homegrown builders, honestly, to carry the load at all.
So that's a good point. When it comes to your point about people want you to get there quickly, every fire department that I've been talking to recently, for the most part, says that the whole sort of driving fast to get to a fire isn't, you don't do that anymore because there's more accidents and more things go wrong as you're
Well, I
speeding
beg to
through.
differ because we just finished our audit through ISO. And we were specifically pulling structure fire reports within timeframes. ISO requested reports within 3 minutes and within 5 minutes. And if we're outside those timeframes, we lose points. We lose our ISO rating, which means our insurance rates go up. So I'm
You know, I
already
get
at that
that.
point.
Yes, no, I understand that, but I guess what I'm saying is, if we're talking about, a matter of 30 seconds longer, because you're going a little slow, like if you're going a short distance, like you have to go really fast for it to actually have an impact on the overall response time, right? If you're going a long
We just pulled
distance.
2 kids out of a burning house fire back in June. Time was of the essence.
Absolutely, it always is. Even if somebody's just, had a heart attack or whatever, it's always time is of the essence. I guess my point is the amount of slowdown that a narrower street would cause isn't large enough, from what I understand around the country, isn't large enough for it to, because you're not pedal to the metal, no matter
No,
what.
because we do have to respond with due regard.
Exactly.
And, driving at 3 o'clock in the afternoon is going to be way different than 3 in the morning, by all means. We have had an accident where a fire truck was involved, but once since I've been here, so when that tone hits, we are required to get there, not only for our citizens' safety.
Yes, for
and
sure.
their health and well-being as well.
Yeah,
But
no,
yes, ISO still requires a timely response. So that is still in effect.
we do too. We as planners and consultants that come to cities require timely response. So nothing that we're going to suggest to you is going to cause you to not be able to
I agree that
respond.
there, 10, 15 seconds may not make a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but it did back in June when those 2 kids were trapped in that house. It did make a difference. We went from, because it was an early morning call, so before shift change, from the bed to pulling those children out of the house in under 10 minutes.
That's great. So it's like though with moving the cars as quickly as possible, same with emergency services, all of those things.
But you can't guarantee people are going to
When-
move the cars.
No, I don't mean literally. I mean, cars driving quickly on your roads. You want their lanes
Yeah,
wide
people
enough so
move over
cars
that
can
way.
drive, right? So we design the roads to accommodate, there's a certain amount of friction you have already, right?
Mhm,
We
absolutely.
could design fire streets where nothing but a fire truck could go on them, right? But we've decided that it's necessary to commingle the different types of vehicles. And as a result, there's a certain amount of friction and slowdown that you have, right?
Mhm.
The roads are designed, hopefully you all are the exception rather than the rule that you're using the road, right? Because an emergency is an emergency because it's not very often.
Right.
If we design the roads so that they are wider and not safe for what happens every day, all the time, which is cars and people walking around and bikers, in order to shave that 15 seconds or whatever, then we actually increase the amount of times you're getting called because we've now created an unsafe condition for the
Well, we
pedestrians
gotta
and
look at the
cyclists.
totality of the circumstances.
Right.
We want to make it safe and effective for all users, but we still got to be able to use and access that road to get to wherever the incident is occurring.
100%.
Yeah.
Totally
So
agree.
we got to find that compromise in between.
And that's the beauty of connectivity too, right?
And so you talk about the street parking. If everybody's parked on the designated parking lanes, just call it that, and there's somebody in front of the responding in, there's nowhere for them to pull over for the fire truck to get by.
Yes, same thing on a 2-lane road with ditches on the side.
Where are you going?
Right.
And please don't take anything I've said the wrong way, that I'm willing to change,
Yeah.
won't change.
Oh,
If there's a better way
absolutely.
to do it, let's go do it.
Like I
I
said,
was just trying to share a little history
For
of how
sure,
we got
yeah.
to where we are.
I said, I've had this conversation
Yeah.
1,000 times around the country. This
Sure.
is like, I'm not,
And I'm with Aaron, you know, if we can find a way to make it work so we can get there without losing time and without losing our ISO rating, I'm all for that.
awesome. We're on the same page then,
Yes, we are.
officially.
Real quick, we have
yeah.
10 minutes left in this.
What do you want to
session.
talk about?
Well, we have Tread here to talk about pedestrians and bikes. If we really don't give them a chance to talk, then we are missing out.
Okay, tell us, Tread.
I mean,
Because we have a very bike and pedestrian unfriendly city.
Unfriendly. Okay.
It's important to understand that not, streets are, I guess, built for different things. There are some that are very auto-centric and need to be, Turner McCall, Shorter Avenue, they're state highways, that has one purpose, but your neighborhood street can have a different purpose.
Yeah.
And be a little less auto-friendly, where you do have to slow down and, you expect that somebody may be on their bike or pushing a stroller or whatever. So, I mean, it's not a blanket, every lane needs to be narrower, but on some streets, maybe they could be, and you gain speed on the auto-centric streets and you may have to slow down on these, and it's a give and take.
Yep.
So,
And as for bikes, I think there's only 1 or 2 locations in the entire current ELDC in the rear overlays that require bikes to be addressed in the development. Mainly if they're only in the river corridor, you have to address the bike and the pedestrian. That's definitely something we need to do more in the new ULDC, because if you notice, this entire conversation has been about cars.
Mhm.
Especially when we're such a trail-centered town, we need to also address the bike and the pedestrian, especially if we have all these bike groups with thousands of bikers coming through. What is it called that comes through every year? We need to start addressing bikes on streets, pedestrian safety, and also ADA also, because most of our sidewalks, at least when we did the GDOT walk.
Well, I was talking about Athens being restrictive, but on their trails, they're the opposite. They're really nice in terms of how they've laid them out in cities. They've actually painted their bike trails green in their downtown areas and through some of the roads.
Definitely more bike focused.
Their bike lanes are literally
Yeah.
painted, so it stands out and it's clear that that's what it's for. And there's obviously a lot of bike cyclists over there, but
well, we've had conversations in the past about, enacting a complete streets policy, which is basically to
Yeah.
Brittany's point, and.
We don't have complete streets
Right, we don't have one.
You can have that.
I think that could be added, but I also think that Public Works, and I think finally the, kind of the climate is changing a little bit as to, from the past of more, pro bike pedestrian, so I think, the goal is to get people downtown, right, from the trails. But also part of what Tread is working to Brittany's point is, better pedestrian facilities, making it more user-friendly, safer. I know Mark's talked a lot about, sidewalk safety, what we said earlier about, sidewalks essentially are trails, connecting. So it's all of those things that need to come together, and we're not naive enough to think that people are going to get out of their cars all the time, right? But what we love to improve for, we would love to see more people using their feet to get to places. But I think, obviously, y'all know this, I'm preaching to the choir, but providing those spaces and getting rid of those barriers, make it easier. Wider sidewalks, even clearer signage is something that we're working on. So I think, obviously I didn't do my homework. I just confess, I haven't looked at the current ULDC, but there's nothing in there about bike and pedestrian and trails.
The only thing in there regards to bike is that currently in the river corridor, if you look in the back of the document, and it says that all development within 200 feet of the river shall address pedestrian frontages and shall be able to accommodate bike parking. And also within our parking requirements, we don't have anything for bikes, for like most places have every 3 spaces or every 6 spaces, you have to have 1 bike parking spot. Or
Is
they have-
address defined?
Huh?
He says they shall address.
Oh, sorry, we don't address bikes in any way, like the bicyclist in the code.
Yeah, no, so you said that, but it has to address pedestrian, something when you're.
Oh,
within
it says,
200 feet.
the river, anything within 200 feet of the river corridor, it addresses the pedestrian, so you have to have a rear pedestrian entrance and a front pedestrian entrance, so they can come off the river and go in, because it's a blue way.
I mean, we can revisit that conversation we had several years ago that was so challenging about Broad Street parking and bike lanes and, you know, reverse parking and putting a bike lane on Broad Street. But we, you know, that was met with such outrage
By
to
who?
change parking on Broad Street, by citizens in the community and downtown business owners. You know, so the kind of happy medium was Sharrows,
Mhm.
are on Broad Street, and I think that serves a okay purpose, you know, but is it a bike lane or is it a traffic lane, right? And with traffic speeds currently on Broad Street, what they are.
And it's in
way over.
fast lane because of back out, you know, parts of it.
Mhm.
But, you know, one thing, I live on Broad Street and the walk score on Broad Street is 67. That's horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. We have a Broad Street that's, we claim is the second widest, main street in Georgia, it's 132 feet wide. Well, that's great, but, you know, when you want to make your downtown a little more intimate, we've done a lot of things to bring sidewalk cafes, different things to make it feel smaller. That plan, you may take a look back at, Alta did the plan that took it down to two total lanes. I think our traffic count at that time was maybe 11,000 cars, and it's gone down since then. You know,
Was that pre-COVID?
Oh, yeah, that was
This
2015, 2014.
Yeah, that's been a while back. But anyway, you know, to think we've got a bike score of 86 and
Oh, right.
67 for walk. You know, my big thing, we want people to be closer in, we want them to be able to walk, we want them to be able to bike. Yet even our very best place, you know, has that poor walk score. My thing on Broad Street's always been, there's only 2 drive-throughs on Broad Street. Yet everything on Broad Street is set up for car. You have to be on foot to do business on Broad Street for the most part, except 2 locations.
Yeah.
Yeah, our Broad Street is not designed for people on feet.
Yeah, it's impressive when you drive in the car, it's like, oh, this is and then that's when you get out as a pedestrian, it's like, yeah, I mean, if it looks like this, it looks good over here, but if I'm gonna go across, it's like, whoa, it's way over there, and this feels really speedy and all of that stuff.
Harry, aren't they doing a speed table test somewhere?
And the 400 block, they're supposed to be doing a speed table.
Which is, to me, really needed. I mean. you
Well,
know,
just
It
some
wouldn't
kind of-
be if the road were designed properly.
Right, exactly.
That's a Band-Aid, that's a aftermarket add-on. It fixes- Yeah.
Yeah, you had a really good point. What was it, Saturday? You said you make the lanes more narrow, people and just intentionally slow down
Yeah.
because, you know.
You just don't feel comfortable driving so fast, you know? So I don't know what, you know, how much you guys can influence the design of the road there. I mean, Alta did a plan. I guess y'all thought at some point.
Is
you
this
could
kind
do
of like
something.
Hendersonville, where they kind of bring everything,
Have you been to Hendersonville?
North
It's got
Carolina?
the serpentine.
Mm.
Anyway, that's pretty neat. We did our community did a inner city visit. We took about 25, 30 people up there and looked at Asheville and Hendersonville
Yeah.
and, you know, some type of traffic calming, something for our.
It was extreme traffic calming to me. I feel like the speed table was, I grew up here, so, I mean, for me, cutting it down to 2 lanes, it's still a pretty.
Our big-
thorough thing.
Our big problem is we don't have alleys behind our Broad Street.
Yeah.
So all our deliveries have to be done on the main street. So
Right.
it is difficult with a 2-lane, you know, handling your deliveries.
Right.
They do it all over the country.
Yeah, well, and the reason I asked if the plan was pre-COVID or not was because once COVID hit, all these cities were shutting down half of their.
Yeah, you're
streets
right.
and-
We didn't do a very good job.
Well, and it was, you know, everybody's, if you had asked them that before COVID, they would have said, oh my God, like, oh my God, this will destroy everything. During COVID, they're like, oh, that means I can get some food and go out to eat. Okay, great. And then they're like, hey, this is pretty awesome. And guess what? Our city's still functioning, you know? So maybe maybe the mindset has
We
changed.
didn't react very
To
well.
dust off the old plan. So, and also reverse angle parking freaks people out everywhere.
Yeah, that
It's
was-
suggested, but it works.
Right. I
And
think-
once they do it and they say, yes, we know you're concerned, but you'll get used to it. People are like, okay, yeah, it took a minute, but yeah, that works. That's better. So.
I guess I'm not as progressive as I think I am when it comes to Broad Street.
Right. Well, also roundabouts freak people out too, you know.
I love it.
I don't know. I know. And when people get and you know, fatalities go to 0, when you put in a roundabout, I'm not suggesting you need a roundabout on
Have you been to
Broadway.
Carmel, Indiana?
We worked in Carmel. We actually did their north downtown master
How
plan.
many
and zoning work.
roundabouts do they have?
They're the roundabout capital of the country.
That's all Aruba has,
Yeah.
all that, just very few red lines.
I would just like to introduce myself.
Hey.
I'm Xavier Ringer. I'm one half of Rome Floyd County. And so I would feel remiss if I didn't mention, the great enhancement that public art can add to our streets.
Yeah.
When we're talking about tread and the trails, I think that's one thing that can really help people slow down and take in their city are public art installations. And also it's an opportunity to get people involved and in the walkways, in the streets. And I know that downtown specifically has a lot of restrictions, but it could be good to think about how we can use artists and public art and installations to really enhance our walkways, our trails, create more educational opportunities. So I think that a lot of times it's one of the things that's kind of put, not even thought about. And I just wanted to make sure I said hello and that we're here too, interested in really seeing how we can install different opportunities on streetscapes, and even thinking about design and signage and street signs that are more creative and allow people to slow down and take in their environment. So yeah, I think that that's something that definitely should be mentioned and implemented in our plans as a city and county. Because I think as we're progressing, it's going to be very important to think about young people and how they interact and people of all ages really. But how can we really incorporate different cultural, the cultural essence of Rome and bring some new life into our environment, which is an extension of the streetscape.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, a lot of the cities that people love, have done a great job of incorporating, public art. It sounds like y'all have a little bit of a hard time deciding what y'all like, and not having controversy surrounding art. So that's a whole nother thing that we all have to think through and maybe just realize that everybody doesn't always like it. Everyone's gonna like stuff, but but do it anyway. And if you do enough of it, if there's not, maybe that's the thing, you don't have enough of it, so each one piece gets so much pressure.
That's been the point.
It's
Our dancing flower.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like,
like
who
the-
goes to the museum to see?
Right,
Piece you go to the
right.
museum to see.
Yeah.
So the problem is
Yeah.
we've got to add to the art so that you may like this one, you may not like that one, the next person.
Exactly.
We don't have enough of it.
And
Exactly.
something that's comprehensive, that if it's put into a development plan, then it's something that can take into account the diversity of thought and or reaction. So it's not an afterthought.
Yeah.
And I think Rome really has a beautiful opportunity to do so. And I think we could take advantage of our small town and what that could mean for our public art.
Yeah, I like your idea too about incorporating art into things that would typically be mundane, like street signs and whatever. And in Serenbe, if you've seen Serenbe do a great job, they had local arts and design the lights, the signs, the trash and the recycle bins, and it adds to the character of that. Doesn't cost a ton, and if surely there's some way to design a street sign that somebody will find controversial or hate, but it seems pretty, easy to make something that's universally accepted. And so that, as you all think about kind of like, what's your thing that gets people into coming here and visiting and all that, maybe making arts more visible, and part of it is could be that in the future. Thanks for that. So, what else? Transportation, connectivity, roads.
Well, the only thing I'm gonna add to this is street parking is a pet peeve of mine, I guess, because where I live in the old East Rome area,
Yeah.
and people have driveways that they're not parking in, they're parking on the road on a hill, you can't see when you're going over the hill.
Yeah.
It's my opinion that street parking kills the feel of a subdivision. Now, I get it, when you get into areas where it just requires it, that you have no choice. I would love to see the city do something, make people park in their driveways and off of the road. That's a whole different issue. But I do think that it hurts some subdivisions when you park in front of the house.
And also, it's danger too.
Absolutely.
So I live on Fifth Avenue.
streets to fill too.
We are the epitome of parking on both sides of the road. That is far too narrow to do so. But with that being said, I'm not aware of anybody getting hit. I'm not aware of anybody even closely remotely getting hit. Nobody's car has been dinged up. Garbage trucks go up and down, fire, ambulance, police. It's pretty cool. I actually like it. It can be annoying sometimes we're going down, you know, when it kind of throttles itself to wait for somebody to drive by and then you have to go. It's kind of a little bit neighborly thing to do, right? But
I bet the speed from 4th to 5th, I guarantee is 10 to 15 miles per hour, maybe even 20 miles per hour.
Yeah,
that's the absolute truth.
You can get a radar gun on Amazon. Yeah, actually, it sounds like something you're passionate about. You also get one, just pass it around, like check it out at the library. And you can get out there and you just check the speed and then you'll see. And in my neighborhood, you actually can hear this because the city, even though they allowed all these neat streets to be designed, they got hung up on the idea that nobody parks in their garage. So they're going to require a 22-foot parking pad behind every garage. So you can have a place to park. Because on-street parking should be for guests. And I said, I don't know how many friends you have. I don't have enough friends to fill up a street unless we're having some big party, right? And so a lot of the on-street parking isn't utilized in the way that it ought to be with the roads designed to hold it because people are parking those parking pads. But in the townhouses and the row houses, they only have a single car garage and they don't have necessarily room for, there's not room for 2 cars on the parking pad, only one. So they more often than any other part of the neighborhood will park on street. And so on one of the streets, it's single family houses, and then it transitions to row houses. And you can hear the cars. When they get to the row houses, they slow down as soon as they hit those parked cars, even though there's the same amount of room for them to pass. And I get such a kick out of it when I drive down the street in a downtown or something, and somebody will sit there waiting on you. And you're like, there's clearly room for the 2 of us to pass, but they're just like, it seems so narrow. And it's like, it's all psychology,
Now, in the transportation world, what you're talking about is called shy distance. And that's the distance, how fast you can go to an object, how close it is, and you still feel comfort.
Yes,
Shy distance.
I love that, shy distance. We want you to be shy in the neighborhoods and in your car, but on the street as a pedestrian, you're bold and you're friendly and outgoing.
Well, one thing that I wanted to mention before I forgot, and this kind of ties into the next session too, and I'm not sure if this was discussed before I got here, but one of the things that I would like to see is more requirements for interpark connectivity along our commercial corridors, because we have, a million driveway cuts off, the state and federal routes and everything. And we do have a distance between, excuse me, if I remember correctly, not correct, we have these lot widths for commercial and everything. I think the point is to try to have a little driveway space 300 feet apart. But that's not always the case. And so you can have a lot, you can have a lot that has a lot of frontage and everything, but 2 different uses have to decide whether their driveways close together. Then it doesn't matter if the lot widths are 300 feet or 50 feet, And so we have, off every street, there's, these driveways and everything, and then there's no turning lane. So, you got people trying to turn to where they're going. And then you got someone, behind you trying to keep going and everything else. So
What's a good example street that issue is happening on?
shorter hall, shorter.
I don't know if you're gonna be able to address much of that though. Shorter is GDOT.
Well-
Bound or ULDC.
Well, my thing is, do we need to look at trying to address that going forward? And I don't know if there's much, because those are kind of built out, but if,
You can, and we did along Riverside, Three Rivers Drive. Three Rivers Drive was after the ULDC. You'll find the driveway spaced out and more minimized. You can't fix Shore Avenue. You can't force the guy next door to let this guy come through his property when he don't want to. You can address it in a new development.
Or when they redevelop the parcel.
Or when they redevelop or multiple parcels, you can address it then, but otherwise, you can't fix that.
Well, if you have a requirement because they will redevelop when these things are disposable buildings, right?
Yeah, the
So-
shorter is GDOT.
But I mean,
But
I think we
it's
still.
private
we still
property
have to-
underneath that.
I mean, if it's our.
right? So you have
We
zoning.
Still do that.
Yeah, but GDOT's not looking to redevelop shoulder in any way, shape, and or form.
No, I'm saying,
No, we're talking
if
about-
somebody redevelops their building on their parcel and their new standard, they come and have to be in compliance with the new updated zoning ordinance. And it requires that interparcel connectivity that Art's talking about, then
I
it
was speaking
happens.
more
piece
or
by
less to
piece.
Stern Lane that you want.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
Well, I
none
mean,
of that's
this-
happening.
yeah.
Well, like you got, on the end of Burnett Ferry, you got two parcels being combined, are they still doing that? Tearing down the pawn shop and the other,
With the gas station.
and the
Oh,
magic
yeah,
wand
they did it for
deal?
the raceway.
No, this is Burnett Ferry talking about.
Okay.
Corner of Burnett
Yeah,
Ferry.
they
and
did.
Shores.
They did do this.
Yeah.
They
So
did
that's,
down the street.
that's a raceway too?
No, it's a convenience store.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah, they merged them all.
convenience store,
So that's a multi-parcel redevelopment.
But what he's saying is that is what happened when they did
But,
racetrack.
yeah, they did, they cleaned it up.
Yeah.
They cleaned that, you probably lost 3 or
Yeah,
4
we lost
existing
three
driveways
cuts.
on Shorter Avenue when they did the raceway. And I think the driveways on Shore Avenue and for the one you're talking about are going away too. I think it's
More than likely, yeah.
Under Whitehead
I don't know.
convenience store.
Let's-
Or gas station combo.
Let's refocus for a sec, because I'd love to hear kind of the group consensus, and I know there's not going to be one, but let's just kind of work through it. Going in the future, is the city, and the county can speak for themselves, I'm certainly not speaking, is the city going to be designed for people or for cars? In our neighborhoods, and in our heavy residential districts, and in our heavy retail districts, is our city gonna be designed for people or for cars?
And all we've talked about is vehicles.
Right.
I was thinking that certain streets, like Shorter Avenue is what it is. You've got Division Street that basically runs parallel to most of it. And, you know, there's an opportunity to make that more pedestrian friendly.
That's
Let
exactly
the
right.
fire department go fast enough to be narrated by Waylon Jennings going down Shorter Avenue.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Division Street,
right. So major thoroughfares being excluded from this conversation, right? It's not going to get you everything you want, and it's not going to get you everything you want. And it's not going to give me everything I want, because I'd narrow it down as much as I could, and you would scream at me, rightfully so. But there is a happy medium, but in that happy medium, we know we're not going to be in the middle. So are we going to lean towards pedestrians or cars?
Well, it was the comp plan said. The comp plan says.
Comp plan says-
pedestrian.
That's
So that
exactly
it has
right.
been decided, it has been
Yeah.
voted, the die has been cast.
Yes.
That's an adopted document.
Okay.
And so
I
that's,
just- I just
that's what
want-
we're doing.
well, I just want to
don't know
bring that
unless y'all
up.
are trying to revisit
No, stay with
the
the
comp
comp
plan.
plan.
So,
I just want to say, and I guess this is a way that y'all work. I just want to say that you guys are the one that pulled the comp plan off the shelf. It was adopted here by the city and county, and I don't know where our shelf is, but it must be huge. It's packed because it has more studies stacked on it. I don't know where that shelf is, but I just appreciate the fact that y'all are concentrating on that comp plan, and this thing is structured around it.
If we adopt it, we need. to put it on.
Nobody else looks at it.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I don't know how many times you brought it up and people looked at you and said,
We look at it regularly.
what is a comp plan?
right. Yeah, no, I mean, I don't need to be
look
naive
regularly.
here, but, and I guess maybe that's why, you know, some of the discussion that we have around in these technical meetings is me pushing against things, because it's like, well, the comp plan says this, here, so we have to do that, you know, it's required by the state, that we follow the comp plan. And so now it's just a matter of putting the meat on the bones and figuring out how to make it work for all the different competing things that haven't been set up to follow that vision, right? And it can be done, it's easy. And just to clarify too, a neighborhood street can easily be designed 7997 and still function for all of the things, including emergency services. That's really tight.
And just talking about that example that Mark brought up, when we were, and Bill was there, we were on the street in Hendersonville where they went to a certain thing, Main Street.
Yeah.
And you heard the emergency vehicle go by and they're like, our emergency vehicle they know this is not the street that they use, it's the next street over.
Yeah.
We had something so much that, depending on what's going on here.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, though, they have to be cognizant of, and we need to think about We got 3 rivers. You got one side of the river, and in certain places, there's only one street to get from one side of the river to the other in a timely manner. If you're going to South Road, you gotta go across that South Road Bridge, which means you gotta go down Rock Street.
Yeah.
So maybe these other towns don't have that.
We need to have a discussion about nodes of fire stations going forwards and how they best serve. We just need to have a long talk and look at, I mean, that's a valid point.
We need to take the
Yes.
airplane up a little higher,
Yes, we
from a
do.
little higher altitude to see, oh, okay,
Because if
there's a
we're
river, there's a
If
river.
we're refocusing on pedestrians, then yes, that needs to happen.
Do y'all have the, like, anything besides jumbo vehicles? Like, are you able, do you have like smaller things you can, where
Got a
you,
couple of F-150s for those hard to reach places, where bigger apparatus can't get to.
They just carry a lot of water.
You're right, I don't know, I was gonna say, I've seen those where they make a swimming pool in the bed of the truck, but
No, that's it.
yeah.
We have,
So you got the trucks,
750-gallon pumpers, we've got 2 500-gallon quints, 500-gallon ladder 1, and 1 soon to be 2 2,000-gallon tanks.
okay, so maybe that's a part of the discussion is, as we say, here's what the streets for pedestrians need to be like, and you say, okay, well, this is the vehicle that is able to accommodate that.
Well, at the same time, let's not lose sight of this either, and that is, this don't mean it's gonna be cheaper to do a development. I mean, a lot of folks wanna know, we gotta squeeze this down so we can make this cheaper to do. Well, to do it this way may not be cheaper.
That's right.
So, just saying.
Yeah, narrow, the good news is if we narrow the streets themselves, the drive lanes, then that extra pavement can end up working in the rear alley. So if we have them, but since you guys have such minimal requirements right now, like not requiring street trees, not requiring necessarily sidewalks on both sides of the street, and not having on-street parking,
You're gonna fix that,
it's
right?
gonna be hard. Oh, yeah, but I mean, it's gonna be hard for me to make the mathematical case to the development
Not gonna
community.
work.
And really I guess the long and the short of it is, hey, it's been a good run while we had it and wasn't required to do all these things. But in the long run, doing the things that we're talking about aren't just good for pedestrians or cyclists. They're good for developers because these developments are more valuable and hold value over time and don't get crushed by the recession, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so it isn't, while there might be some additional upfront costs to do something that has higher standards, that, you know, it's the long play. So,
Pavement is cheaper than a garage.
Let me ask this question. Why is Smith Douglas here in such a large way right now? Are they here because our standards,
who is that?
Smith Douglas, are they here?
I don't know who that is.
It's a new building.
I'll tell you why they're here. Pin up demand, lack of new build.
They're here because they found the next, they're here because they found the next level of dead subdivision.
Yeah, they come with
They're-
They're through with, they're through with those.
You're right,
They're
you're
going
right.
into- So my question is, can they develop here per lot cheaper than somewhere else?
Oh, God, no.
Because of all these higher required parking lanes and stuff like that.
They can do it now. I mean, it's $40,000 a watt right now.
If you look at the scale of what they're doing here compared to the scale of what they're doing in Bartow County or some of these other counties, we're just some more blanket items.
I'm just asking. I mean, I'm trying.
I
to
think
figure
they're
out.
here because there's nobody else building. I mean, really.
Well, I agree
And
with that
they've
too.
seen, when they've done stuff here, it sells like that, and they're like, wow.
Brian,
Rome's
I'm just
got
trying to figure
more
out what's their
absorption.
development
have
cost.
have you
No,
looked through
it's
some of our
high.
census stuff?
Works like somewhere else.
This should have been in the housing section, but I didn't see this until after our housing session on Saturday. Our number of units, housing units, have decreased in both the city and the county from 2010 to 2020. Since 0.2% decline in both the city and the county.
Wow.
We've torn down more than we built.
Exactly.
A lot of that too, like we discussed, so that's, a lot of it's the housing authority. I mean, you
Well,
lose Altitude Terrace. and a
We
couple
did have some big developments that came down.
Yeah.
And I would assume that those housing units include public housing in the census number.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you lose a big 100-unit development, I mean, that's a pretty good lift.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was pretty interesting. I don't know if you've seen that. 0.2% decrease in the city.
No, I mean, like in Athens, Alabama, right now, we're doing a comp plan and they're pulling like more than 2,000 building permits a year.
I'm gonna get Walt.
for several years.
I want you to be there, so you can tell your side.
How big is that city?
You know,
Athens?
why we, you know, why so.
30,000 people?
Let me see what's around there. Take a moment.
All right, I think we are over time, but this is obviously a complicated issue, or complicated topic, I should say, not issue, because now we got all solved, it's no longer an issue. But there's still more discussion to be had to figure out the details altogether. So it sounds like we're at least all on the same page that, yes, the comp plan is the adopted vision for the future. And it says what it says. And so now the task is to figure out how to design all of these parts and pieces that make it work for everybody.
And keep in mind, we have a 5-year update of the comp plan coming next year, and then we've got 5 years from now, but in our world, it's here before you know it. We've already got to start planning for the new comp plan.
Should actually start doing what this one says.
Yeah, doesn't say, yeah, next year you can decide if you still want to focus on pedestrians and people, you know.
The DCA requires an update every, is it 10 years? So even though it's a 2040 comp plan, the state requires a 10-year full update.
Yeah, but if the way that we always say when we write a comp plan, we write it to be timeless enough that it's really like 100-year plan. And so any kind of refinements or revisions are literally like a few tweaks here and there.
I would say though, our comp plan, though,
But
from the
maybe not.
planners who do it on the daily basis,
Yeah.
there are large sections missing, and we have found a lot of issues with it currently.
Yeah, so my point is, when you do it next time, even though it's the 5-year and you do another 5 years, hopefully this next one you'll get it and then you won't really.
I'm
do
hoping this
anything.
next one, currently our comp plan maybe satisfies 25 to 50% of the need of what it does. So hopefully the next one, we have a better consultant that does a better job.
And departments outside of the planning department, who knows anything about this?
Well, everybody should have a copy if they haven't lost it.
You can ask anybody, and they will look at you like you just ask, where the manual is.
You can-
Go to Rocky.
We've got, well, it's online.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Was the comp plan pre or post ULDC, the last?
It was 2018.
There's my example. That's the engineering department just asked you when.
Well, I don't-
And I'm not saying anything,
But it's not the
Yeah.
rules I have to go by. It's not my rules.
Is it not? Isn't it, it's the vision, adopted vision for the whole city. It's all departments.
Yeah, but it doesn't have that crucial infrastructure.
I know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it doesn't have your standards and stuff in it, but the direction that you should be going is in that comp plan.
Trust me. I agree.
All right.
I don't drive that way.
I know.
What's the next meeting? When's the next meeting?
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Less than 10 minutes.